Modeling. Modeling is a truly awesome part of neuro-linguistic programming. It's one of the core functions. It's how to take any personality trait, skill, or ability that somebody has and duplicate it so that you can have it for yourself faster, simpler, and easier than you could ever acquire it any other way. Simply fantastic. Now we're going to go through and break down exactly how this is done through neuro-linguistic programming. Now with modeling, there's basically 5 different areas that we look at: physiology, beliefs, self-talk, visualization, and sequence. We're going to take a look at each. I want you to have a deep and rich understanding of each and every one of these. So let's start by looking at physiology. Literally the way you sit, you stand, you gesture, how close you like to get to people, touch, the pace at which you move, the rapidity. This is also known as matching and mirroring. Why? Because in neuro-linguistic programming, and they teach this in a lot of the neuro-linguistic programming sales courses, is you can gain rapport with somebody by simply moving the way they move, talking the way they talk, breathing the way they breathe. And you can do this in each of the areas, but for physiology, you know, if I put my hand up to my chin, you might wait a moment and then put your hand up to your chin in a slightly different fashion. So it's not monkey see, monkey do. You don't want to seem as if you're mimicking somebody, but by behaving roughly the way they behave, we like people that have the good taste to be like us. So this creates rapport building. Now from a modeling perspective, because I want to make sure we get back to that, that's what we're focusing on. Physiology, the way we move our bodies, how we use our bodies, just like people talk with their hands, this is part of our thinking process. Try talking but not moving your hands. It will seem very odd. You will quickly realize that how you move is part of how you think. This is why some people say, well, I think better when I jog. I think better when I get up in the morning. I think better when I go for a walk. Why? Because they're changing their physiology. They're not wrong. They do think better because they're using their body differently. They say, oh, I think better after a workout. People are thinking, oh, that's endorphins and this and that. And some of that can be true, but some of it is I just used my body in a different way, and therefore it changed how I thought. So when we're looking at physiology and we want to model somebody, I've written down here the key areas that you want to look at. How do they sit? Where do they put their hands? What do they do with their hands? How quickly do they move? What is their pace? What kind of gestures do they like to use? Do they use small gestures, large gestures, fast gestures, slow gestures, small gestures, fluid gestures, jerky gestures, powerful gestures, weak gestures? There's a lot of different kinds of gestures as you're guessing. What kind of expressions do they use? Are they flat in their affect? Are they always smiling? Do they look down? Do they use their face a lot? Do they use it very little? Proximity, this is the comfort zone. How close that person will get to you or won't get to you. How much do they use touch? A little, a lot, none. These are all the things that you want to duplicate if you want to duplicate their system of being in the world, which is what? Modeling. Let's go to the next component. Belief systems. Another part of matching and mirroring. This is getting down to the meat and potatoes of why they think the way they do. This is kind of the why and the how. So belief systems start out with, obviously enough, your beliefs. What do you believe? And also, how do you believe it and why do you believe it? Now, from your beliefs, as you're listening to people's beliefs, they're going to imply certain values. Some people come right out and tell you their values, but mostly you have to look at their beliefs, and then you, by extension, figure out their values. By listening and absorbing, you're also going to learn their morals and their ideas, ways that they think, sequences and ways that they think, philosophies and ways that they think, and an overall general logic system that they use. This is the part that if you want to do modeling, you want to do this matching and mirroring, you want to gain their systems, this is one of the key areas to look at, and these are the key sub areas: beliefs, values, morals, ideas, and logic system, especially logic system. Self-talk, huge. What is self-talk? Simply the way in which you talk to yourself. This is the vocalization, the sub-vocalization that you do in your head. It's everything that you think. If you were listening, if you were mind reading, you would hear somebody talking to themselves. That's what self-talk is. Now, when you're looking at how they talk to themselves, you want to look at the language that they use. And we're going to go more in depth in this later. The expressions that they use. Things like, how was your day? You ask them, how was their day? And they say, oh, just another day in the battlefield. Well, that's part of their self-talk. That's going to make you feel different than if they said, oh, you know, it was a great day. Couldn't be better if I were twins. So, expressions that they use. Basically quotes and phrases and ways of talking to themselves. Tone. High tone, low tone, up tone, down tone, pessimistic tone, all kinds of different tones. Optimistic tones. Analogies. I gave you an example. Just another day in the battlefield. Couldn't be better if I was twins. These are analogies. Something that means something else. It's a way of describing the world to themselves. Very important. Emotions. Emotions come from the way you talk to yourself. If you tell yourself everything that's great in your life, you'll feel great. If you talk to yourself about everything that's bad in your life, you're going to feel bad. If you think angry thoughts, you're going to get angry emotions. I've got a whole course on REBT, which is Rational Motive Behavioral Therapy. It's the science of how your brain works. Works wonderful with this NLP system, and will give you a richer, deeper understanding of this whole self-talk component, because that's what REBT is based on. So shameless plug there. Check it out. Sequence. What you say to yourself. First I talk about this, then I talk about this, then I talk about this, then I talk about this. It shows you their system for doing things, their way of expressing these things in their mind, and the specific sequence they do it in. Sequence is very important. If I say the dog bit Johnny, that's different than Johnny bit the dog. Huge difference, right? Memories. Part of your self-talk is a picture's worth 1,000 words. So not only will we talk to ourselves verbally, we're also going to picture certain things, and we're going to bring up whole memories, which are what? Pictures and emotions and thoughts and feelings. It's a very rich version of self-talk. Memory is pretty much all-inclusive. Visualization. So we talked about self-talk, but a picture's worth what? 1,000 words. So, images that you bring to your mind when you think of something. Remember, we're trying to duplicate how the person's doing this. As they're using this skill, what are they picturing? What perspective are they taking? Are they seeing themselves from the outside? Are they seeing themselves as if it were up upon a movie screen? Are they seeing themselves as if through their own eyes? What perspective are they taking? And perspective can also mean other things too, like a positive perspective or a negative perspective, but mostly it's visual. Now, visualization can also do with size. Do you make it big and large in your mind? Like when you want to accomplish something or you want to be self-confident, you picture yourself winning and you make it big and huge like it's up on the big screen. If you want to diminish visions of yourself failing, you shrink them down so they're so tiny they just fade off in the distance and disappear. That's size. Color. Do you see things in black and white? Do you see them as bold and bright? When you want to intensify something, you saturate with color. When you want to de-intensify a certain feeling or way of being in the world, you de-intensify the color. The pace. How fast do they visualize? Intensity. The emotion that they put into the visualization. And the drama. A lot of people, to intensify things, they increase or decrease the drama of what they're visualizing. Very, very powerful in terms of understanding the person's system. Now, modeling excellence is a recipe, and you got to get the recipe right. A recipe is a set of instructions for how you do something. And if you understand the recipe, and we've talked about some of those components, the visualizing, the physiology, the belief systems, the language that they use, this is all a recipe. So they do it in a certain order and in a certain amount in certain sequences. Now, you have to do it in the right sequence and just the way it's done by the person that you're modeling. If you do that, it'll come out absolutely fantastic. So, we need to use the right ingredients and in the right sequence. So what is their logic system? Listen to what they're saying, see how they're being in the world, notice how they make logic, and you'll nail down the logic system. The thought processes, you can almost see people thinking. To get some more of this out, you're going to want to ask them questions. Well, why'd you do that? And why'd you think about it that way? And what was going through your mind when you were thinking about that? To get the visualization, sometimes you got to ask them how they're picturing it. As they're talking, people are always sharing their philosophies. You also want to look at how they're picturing things. You know, say, well, when you have a problem and you're thinking about it in your mind, what do you picture? What do you see? What's that process for you? And feedback. How do they know if they're getting something right or wrong? How do they adjust? Like if you're driving your car down the road, what do you use for feedback? Use visual, use sound. You're calculating in your mind where all the cars are at different times. These are all feedback things. When you have a conversation with somebody, you're looking at their face and visual cues to give you feedback. So as we're modeling excellence, we got to make sure that we have all these components in place. So sequencing, like I said earlier, is huge. You got to do the first thing, then the second thing, then the third thing. Follow the exact recipe. Make sure you got the right timing and the right setup. If you do that, you'll pull it off and you will be able to model excellence. So let me give you a concrete example of this. Say you were trying to learn how to be a great sharpshooter. What would you do? You would go back through the pieces that we talked about earlier. The physiology. Okay, you're a great sharpshooter. How do you set your body up? How do you like to lay on the ground? How do you like to get your elbows? Do you relax your shoulders first? What do you do? How do you line up your sights? All these types of things that are the physical mechanics of how you do it. Then you go through their belief systems. What are some of your belief systems? And the person might tell you, well, I always believe I'm going to hit the target. I never even consider missing. I believe that I can have absolute faith in my training. Why? Because I had an awful lot of training and I've done it over and over and over again. I know from experience, I run movies in my heads of all the successful shots I've had. How do you picture things? I picture the target as being huge and closer than it is. I picture the bullet going right dead center through the target, not a little to the left, not a little to the right. I see a perfect shot before I ever take the shot. I use my emotions. When I have a certain feeling, like I have a good feeling, when I've got the shot in just the right space, when I have a sense of feeling certainty that I can't miss, bam, I squeeze the trigger. These are all the different components that you're putting together for how they do it. Now, if you lie down the way they lie down, set up your gun the way they set it up, think about the types of things that they think about, feel the types of things that they feel, follow the thought patterns that they do, and follow all these things in the right sequence, I can almost guarantee you the first time you do it, you're going to be 2, 3, 4 times better. They actually did a study on this in the military, and they found that they were able to get somebody as good as their best sharpshooter. They could get them about 80 to 90% of the way in about 4 days. That's amazing. These great sharpshooters took years to get this good. And you can get your team 80 to 90% of the way there in just 4 days. How'd they do that? Neuro-linguistic programming matched up with a little bit of practice. More neuro-linguistic programming, more practice. The better they got the neuro-linguistic programming and added in a little bit of practice to gain confidence and accuracy, to get some of that feedback we talked about, that just took a 4-day period. They used to train these guys for 2, 3, 4 weeks to get at half these levels. So this was a huge difference in our military training for our troops. It was a wonderful advance. Where'd it come from? Neuro-linguistic programming. And now you have this technique too.